Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Teske Brief, and I'm Judge Steven Teske, retired. And this series examines one of the most important stories in American law and government today: what happens when the lawyers entrusted to enforce justice begin to fear the very system that they serve. And across this series, we're going to be exploring why experienced prosecutors are leaving the Department of Justice, how political pressure can distort legal judgment, why independent courts and state bars still matter, and what is lost when institutions ask for power, but they stop earning the trust. This is not a story about personalities alone. It's a story about professional duty, constitutional guardrails, and whether the rule of law can withstand the pressures placed upon it. This is episode 2, and it's titled The Unraveling. So before we begin, remember this: titles are temporary, power is borrowed, integrity is tested when pressure arrives. And this is the Teske Brief. Welcome back. You know, a government agency's in trouble when the people inside it start resigning like they just found out the company retreat is at a federal prison. That's where we are with the Department of Justice, because the resignations were the headline, but they were not the story. The story is why they left. A lot of people looked at prosecutors leaving DOJ and thought, oh, okay, new administration, normal turnover. Yeah, right, sure, okay. And when rats leave a ship, maybe they just missed the dock. Or maybe they know something. Former prosecutors and internal accounts are describing something deeper than office politics. They're describing pressure to bring cases they didn't believe in, pressure to support legal positions they thought were weak, pressure to move faster than the facts, pressure to produce outcomes first and jurisdiction later. That's not management. That's Amazon Prime for constitutional problems. One reported phrase says it all: find the evidence. Not review the facts, okay? Not see where the investigation leads. Not even, hey, please do your best. No, find the evidence. That's not prosecution, folks. That's a scavenger hunt with subpoenas. And therefore, that makes it a persecution. And the difference matters, because in a functioning justice system, you do not start with the answer and then pressure people to reverse engineer the question. You don't reverse engineer the question. You start with the facts. You test those facts against the law. And only then do you decide whether there's a case. That order is the whole game. Once you reverse it, you're not doing justice. You're doing theater with letterhead. Now, some people hear this and they think, oh, so what? Bosses pressure employees everywhere. Okay, sure. But most employers are not licensed officers of the court. That's the difference. If your manager tells you to fudge a sales report, okay, well, that's bad. But if a prosecutor is told to file something unsupported by evidence, that can cost them their law license, their career. That's why the phrase in this series matters: the bar card. Because when lawyers say, I'm not risking my bar card, they're not being dramatic. They're reading the rule book. I have often said that, both when I practiced before the bench and even still today that I'm back to practicing after being out on the bench for 22 years. And on the bench as well, I've had pro se parties in front of me. They're non-lawyers. I don't blame them, but they're asking me to do things I can't tell them to do. And they get a little frustrated. I said, look, if I do that, okay, I can get in trouble. I can get kicked off the bench. That's illegal, okay? I would tell my clients, they would ask me, well, can I do this? No. Well, will you help me do it anyway? No, I can't, because I don't want to lose my bar card. I don't want to lose it. I point to the wall, my license you see up there. And my wife would be really ticked off, because that's how I bring home income, all right? So imagine you're a career prosecutor, okay? And you know the case is weak. And your options are file it and risk your license, or refuse and risk your career, or lastly, leave and keep your integrity. And you know what, folks? A lot of people picked door number 3. They left because they wanted to keep their integrity. They did not want to lose their license. Okay? Now, frankly, that may have been the healthiest choice in the building. But when the people who say no leave, who's left? That's when culture changes. I mean, who's left behind? I mean, it's not with a giant speech. It's not with a dramatic music. It's with smaller decisions, okay? The careful lawyer exits. The aggressive lawyer advances. The cautious memo gets ignored. The bold finally gets applause. And before long, the message is clear. Judgment is optional. Compliance is a growth strategy. Now, here's the part nobody in power likes. Courts are noticing. Yep, those lawyers left behind. Okay, Pam Bondi's out. Todd Blanche is in. Pam Bondi didn't like, she criticized the judges in the first place. Todd Blanche is no different. Okay, but the judges have started asking uncomfortable questions about rushed timelines, weak evidence, procedural shortcuts, and whether some prosecutions look more selective than neutral.
Finally, in their second year of the Trump administration, federal judges have figured out that they're, well, federal judges and that they have an expansive tool bag of techniques and powers that they can use against a defiant, out of control, lawless, rogue Department of Justice and Donald Trump himself. It's not just contempt proceedings. There's other things that judges can do, and they're starting to do it. They're starting to make the Department of Justice tattletale on itself, do its own self-audits of all the orders that they have violated, and then take steps from there. They've ordered senior officials in the Trump administration to come in for questioning or face contempt or prison charges. We've got ruling after ruling. We've got bar associations now going after lawyers that worked for Donald Trump, no longer working for Donald Trump. I cover it all.
Judges do not usually wake up hoping to write, hey, what exactly are you people doing over there at the Department of Justice? When they start asking it anyway, that's a sign. And every time an experienced prosecutor walks out the door, DOJ loses more than just a resume. It loses judgment, memory, trial skill, credibility, the kind of wisdom that says, yes, we can file this, but we absolutely should not. That voice is expensive to replace and impossible to replace quickly.
Ravi, the Department of Justice tries many of the most significant cases on the federal level. Think mob bosses, drug lords, corrupt governors, and mega corporations. Now around the country, the DOJ is lowering its standards for new AUSAs as it tries to staff up after a talent drain under the Trump administration. In some cases, requiring no work experience as a lawyer at all, only a law degree and passing the bar. El Chapo, Timothy McVeigh, the Mafia Family Secrets trial in Chicago, Rod Blagojevich, George Ryan, Mike Madigan, all tried and convicted by expert assistant U.S. attorneys at the Department of Justice.
The attrition rate now is such, and the recruitment rate is so slow, that those things are meeting in a very sticky, difficult place.
Juliet Sorensen, a Loyola University law professor and former assistant U.S. attorney, says the role of AUSA has been one of the most prestigious in the criminal justice system. Now the DOJ is desperate to fill an onslaught of vacancies nationwide, lowering its standards in some jurisdictions for hiring to getting a law degree and passing the bar.
Not only does it undercut the reputation of the DOJ, but it undercuts the court system and the rule of law in our federal courts.
That change hasn't happened yet here in the Northern District, which still requires 2 years of experience post-law degree. But in Minnesota, where double-digit numbers of attorneys quit after the killings of Renee Good and Alex Preddy, in Arizona and elsewhere, you can be hired to one of the most important positions in U.S. justice with no experience as a lawyer.
Having clerked for a judge, haven't practiced at a large or small law firm, have never represented a client, and now you're representing the United States.
Sorensen says early clerking and experience in trial court is vital for new AUSAs stepping into a role with the most important client in the nation. But as the I-Team has previously reported, mid-level AUSAs with subject matter expertise are in high demand.
It's at the more senior ranks, and this won't do anything to help that problem.
ABC 7 chief legal analyst Gil Sofer telling the I-Team he didn't anticipate the gold standard of attorneys to fall.
An assistant U.S. attorney position has long been one of the most coveted jobs. The idea that there would be an urgent need to pull in prosecutors from the junior most ranks is not something I ever expected to see.
Now, some folks will say this is all politics. No. Politics is arguing over policy. This is about whether the most powerful legal institution in the country follows evidence or follows pressure. Those are different things. And if you can't tell the difference, please never run anything that happens to have handcuffs as a tool. Because you see, DOJ has enormous power. It can investigate you, charge you, seize assets, drag you through years of litigation, and even if you win in the end, the process itself can punish you. That's why integrity at the front end matters so much. If the standard becomes, we'll figure it out later, then everyone should be nervous. What we're watching is not just controversy. It's the unraveling of the assumptions that make justice possible. That evidence matters. That leaders protect independence. That lawyers tell courts the truth. That power shows restraint. Once those assumptions start to fray, trust goes with them. And trust is a lot harder to restore than a press release. The resignations were never the story. They were the warning. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Judge Steve Teske, retired, and this is the Teske Brief. And in our next episode, we will talk about what a real prosecution looks like. And remember, justice doesn't fail because nobody noticed. It fails when everybody notices it too late. Until the next episode, be safe and take care. Goodbye.